Hello and welcome to Jaw Law. I'm your host, Joe McGregor from Dallas, Texas, and today we are going to talk about that dreaded 50-50 partnership.
Any material communicated on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be legal advice. Nothing herein should be considered to create an attorney-client relationship. Please consult an attorney for legal advice on your matter.
Today, we are going to talk about the dental partnership, but before I do that, thank you so much for all of you who have taken the time to rate and review this show. It helps us so much. And for those of you who have not, kindly ask, obviously, if you find this helpful, hopefully if you're listening to it, it's because you think this is helpful. If you find this helpful and you think it could be helpful for your peers, please rate and review us because it helps get this in front of more people. Okay, so the dental partnership is this interesting animal because I hear so many different opinions on partnerships. I hear things from you should never be in a partnership to I see certain CPAs and consultants encouraging partnerships as a way to hopefully retain people. And specifically, what we're going to talk about today is the 50-50 partnership because it seems there's no greater lightning rod than the 50-50 partnership. So many advisors, and this includes CPAs, friends, family, other dentists, they will tell people never do a 50-50 partnership. First of all, what are we even talking about? A 50-50 partnership means we have this dental practice, I own half, you own half, and we are split 50-50. Half of the shares belong to me, half of the shares belong to you. So by default, there's this expectation that I get a vote, you get a vote, and because we're equal partners, our votes count equally, where you can see where the problems might lie. If one day we disagree about something material, well, maybe we have a problem. And that's why you see a lot of people, not just advisors, but I see it online and stuff. People will say if you have two equal partners, you don't really have a boss. And that's what we're going to attack today. Is this true? I want to start out with the question, why would we even have a partner in the first place? It is the case that no dental practice needs a partner. You only add a partner because you find some kind of value out of having that partner. The most common reasons I hear people wanting partners, number one, probably the thing I see the most often. This is about frequency. I see people extending partnership opportunities as a form of retention. If you own 30% of this office, you're going to be less likely to leave. As a cousin of that same concept, some people are offering partnership because they feel they have to. Maybe I'm a general dentist and I've had this prosthodontist come in and do a lot of work, and now that work is a significant portion of my annual revenues, and if that prosthodontist leaves, then out walks a significant source of revenue, and so you feel you have to. So it's kind of like retention. It's kind of coming from a different place. The next most common one is probably just that people are friends. Like you have a colleague in the community who is also a dentist, and you enjoy working with that person. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's your dental school classmate. Whatever, you enjoy doing work with that person, and you say, hey, let's work together. Another reason that people will partner, and I think this is a pretty good one, it allows you to split some costs. We have to be careful about this because you would think, oh, it's half. It's not quite half, right? Because the more work that you're doing, you're going to have more staff, and that's one of your biggest expenses. You need more space. So we have to be careful, but it is true that on some expenses, you can trim those up. So if both partners are moving at good productivity rates, yes, you can drive down your overall relative cost of doing business. And I think one final benefit, and I'm going to call it a benefit. I don't know that anybody gets into a partnership just for this, but it gets cited a lot when people are talking because we'll ask people, why are you going to be in a partnership? And they'll say, quality of life. Now there's someone in my office who can step in while I'm going on vacation. There's somebody else getting business, producing dentistry. And if I have a bad month, hopefully they didn't, things like that. There is potentially a lifestyle cushion that exists there. It's also a colleague to bounce ideas off of, things like that. So there are positively dentists out there who never want to be in a partnership, and there are dentists out there who will be able to maximize their own work as a dentist by being in a partnership. I don't think one is right and one is wrong. It's more about who you are. And obviously, the basis of this episode is who they are. The next topic we need to talk about is the context of becoming a partner. And this is going to be relevant a little bit more here in a second, but there is a difference if I am hiring you as an associate and I don't want you to leave and I'm like, okay, well, I want you to be my partner. That's a different thing than, hey, buddy from dental school, let's go be partners. It also requires different things of the partnership if you already have an established practice and you're asking someone to join your established practice or vice versa, versus both of you are forming a partnership in order to go start a practice or buy a practice. As an extension of this conversation, we kind of label these as one being an operational partnership and one being a transitional partnership. In an operational partnership, that's where you're getting into a partnership with your colleague and it's indefinite. There's no end time. There's no finite destination of how long this partnership is supposed to last, which is opposed to a transitional partnership. A transitional partnership is one where we are temporarily becoming partners. And the easiest example is somebody's retiring and we're going to do a buy-in, buy-out. Maybe somebody is 65, they want to retire in the next 5 years, so they bring in this young 35-year-old associate, and over the next 5 years, they're going to either be partners or do some type of buy-in where they're transitioning the old dentist out. We call that a transitional partnership. Makes sense. Operational partnership is, hey, we're going to be partners. You're going to own some portion of this office and I'm going to own the rest. And we're just going to do our thing. And the reason that's relevant to our conversation and to yours, if you're thinking about a partnership, is that in our observation, our experience is that people can handle a certain thing. And we'll talk about what that thing is, but people can handle a certain thing. They can handle things, right? Negative things, things that make them uncomfortable, things that they don't like about the other person. They can handle that if they see the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you think that your partner isn't very cool, you thought he was cool, but now you learned that he's not terribly cool, but you only have to be his partner for another 2 years, that's different than, man, I really don't like my partner, tells horrible jokes, a little inappropriate with the staff, and I might be his partner for the next 30 years. Completely different outlook. And that is, I would suggest, one of the most central ideas about a partnership. You think about the partnership completely different if it's a transitional partnership versus an operational partnership. Now, we're kind of moving all over the place here, but I promise we'll bring it back together at the end. I want to talk about what I would consider possibly the most important aspect of contemplating a partnership and talking about a dental partnership in particular, and that is kind of the psychographic of who dentists are. Now, listen, it is absolutely the case that some dentists never will function in a partnership, doesn't matter what. like no context, no other person. That's just not built for them. There are also dentists who never want to own a practice. Never, they want some other person to take care of everything else. We all know those people. But it is my experience that one of the things that makes dental partnerships a little unique and a little difficult is the nature of the profession and the professional. A lot of dentists are appealed to dentistry because they are slightly independent, sometimes very independent in nature. They know that when they go into dentistry, there is the opportunity to be your own boss and be independent from oversight from other people. It's your asset, and there's an appreciation expectation with that asset. At the same time, we're talking about a profession, and some people don't like to hear this, but after a certain amount of time, the experience only marginally benefits you. And I know some people are going to disagree, but there are studies on this. Hand speed doesn't increase materially after the first couple of years. Acquisition of new skills, things like that, are acquired through coursework, through teaching, not necessarily just because you keep doing it. Which means that the difference between a first-year dentist and a 5-year dentist is maybe pretty significant, but the difference between like a 10-year dentist and a 20-year dentist, not nearly as great. And so it's entirely possible that somebody who has less experience might actually be a better dentist and this is important, might actually be better at running a practice. So what does that mean to us when we're thinking about partnerships? The reason that I think sometimes we get afraid of partnerships is because we hear the horror stories. Where do the horror stories come from? Sometimes it's because people just shouldn't be in a partnership and they're not good people. That happens. We've seen that. We've seen situations where like, man, I can't believe that person even got into a partnership with that human being because they're not very nice. They're not very kind. They're not very fair, whatever. But a lot of the partnerships that we don't see work out, we're kind of set to fail from the outset. Believe it or not, it's not usually the 50-50 partnerships that are failing. Now, law states that at some point we got to separate this 50-50 partnership at some point in the future, right? Like sometime in the future, they have to stop being partnerships. But the ones that seem to prematurely evaporate, those are partnerships where people have 10% of the shares, 30% of the shares, 40% of the shares. Because a lot of times the practice owner that is extending the shares is saying, hey, I heard that I shouldn't give you 50%. So why don't I give you 49 or 30 or 20 or whatever? The problem is you may have a partner who owns 20% of your practice, but still sees themselves as your equal. And that's fine for a certain period of time. And it may be okay forever. By the way, we have clients where somebody is going to forever own 20%. That can absolutely happen and both parties can be happy. But it is the case that often if somebody wants 20%, they want to feel like they own the practice. And when you have 20%, the very reason that we say 50-50 isn't good is the same reason that 20% doesn't satisfy most dentists. It may satisfy them at first, but they're not going to get to participate in the full appreciation of that asset. They may be business partners with someone that they don't agree with or don't agree with all the time and aren't able to enact changes in their office. So it limits the feeling of ownership. And they're a minority partner, so it's harder to feel like this is my practice. It's not. It's someone else's practice, and you get to participate in the ownership. Again, stressing here, that doesn't mean it's wrong. And like I said, we help people get into those scenarios all the time. We're positioning this against the 50-50 partnership. Why is it, and let's segue into the 50-50 partnership, it is the case that we don't think it's as bad as other people that we've heard. We've heard all these horror stories and recommendations to not be in a 50-50 partnership. And by the way, I think that's good advice, probably in most scenarios. It just is different in dentistry. I'm not saying that you should have a 50-50 partnership. I'm saying those people probably don't have a ton of experience seeing 50-50 partnerships in dentistry, or maybe any partnership in dentistry, because that's just not what we're seeing on the ground with our clients in the industry. The 50-50 partnership has the value of making both parties feel like this is theirs. They're equal partners with their colleagues. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution. I'm just saying it allows them to feel like, hey, this is my practice. I'm not junior to anybody, not senior to anybody either, but I'm not junior to anyone. I'm on equal playing ground. And that seems to make a huge difference for so many dentists out there. But what if you run into some of these problems, like decision making, things like that? I will tell you that this is not just us. Any good dental lawyer and dental CPA is going to have ways in which you are able to set this up for adequate decision making. And what do we do when we don't agree? There are going to be partnership agreements that kind of outline what you can do, what you can't do, and both parties agree to it at the beginning. We even have 50-50 partnerships where the decision-making rests with one of the partners, but the other partner still gets to feel like, hey, this is my practice. And with the 50-50 partnership in your agreement, that doesn't even mean that's exactly how you get paid. You can set your partnership to compensate the partners pretty much however you want. And I'm sure that your CPA and your attorney are going to have ideas about how best to split up the partnership funds. And it's going to be in a way that has made sense for their clients in the past, not just some one-off recommendation. Oh, you shouldn't be a 50-50 partnership because you can't make decisions. That's just not true. At least not true in the sense of if you have a good CPA, financial advisor, consultant, good lawyer, there are just what I would suggest relatively easy ways around that. Furthermore, that advice, when you flip it around, is giving someone 30% somehow better than the 50-50 partnership. It just doesn't seem to be that way. I think that in a group practice, obviously that's going to be a little different. And in growing corporate operations, they're not going to want you to be a 50-50 partner. And sometimes that's totally okay. That fits in with your goals and what you're looking for. But as far as like the private practice, you and a partner, that's really who we're talking to today. And again, it's entirely possible that the personalities involved for your deal, 70-30, works just fine. I'm only stating that those who say 50-50 is a problem, I'm just not sure that that's how I see this. And why is it? Because you get to be an equal to your peer. Why does the 20% not work out so much? Because you're never an equal to your peer. You're always Mr. Junior, Mrs. Junior. And that's fine for some people, not fine for others. And I think in closing, the only thing I want to say is that sometimes what we're trying to do is we're trying to force an idea on two partners, when in reality, it may be the case that those two partners really shouldn't be partners. And I just think some people need to invest a lot more into the thought process here. If somebody wants a partner and they want their partner to be a 30% partner, there are dentists out there who are perfectly fine being a 30% partner. But if that person that you're talking to and talking with is not that person, it's not going to work. It may work in the short term, but it is not going to work the way you want it to work in the long term. You're better off looking for the partner who wants to be a 30% partner instead of trying to force the 50% partner into 30%. I think this could be a little bit controversial out there. There are definitely going to be some people who disagree with what I'm saying. That's okay. These are just our observations, our opinions. If you called us, this is the conversation we're going to have. I've literally had that call today talking about, somebody who has multiple offices and is partnering in one of the offices. As long as that person that wants to buy into that office is cool with the more fractional approach, that's perfectly fine. There is someone out there for everyone. Find the person, not the structure. The structure is not the problem. The 50-50 is not the problem. It's the people. Find the right people. You can make anything work. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.